The Shamrock Show.
The Shamrock Show is brought to you by the law firm of Scott Camisar and Stephen Reck. Check them out at stephenreck.net. That's STEPHENRECK.net. They can take care of any of your civil or legal liability needs. If you've been hurt, medical malpractice, deposed Nigerian prince has scammed you out of all your money, whatever you got going on, whatever you've been wronged, Scott will make it right. Scott is my guy. I highly recommend him for all your civil needs. He's not a criminal lawyer, so if you committed a murder, he's not your guy, but I probably got one for you. But Scott is your guy for all your civil and legal liability needs. Check them out on Facebook or again at stephenreck.net. Highly recommend Scott. Great guy. He's also got a great Instagram. Check his Instagram out. I'll put the link up in the background. Put it right here. So check out Scott Camisar for any of your legal needs. I highly recommend him. He's a friend of the Shamrock Show. He lets me bounce off any legal stuff I have for the podcast. He will take care of you. Make sure that you get paid. Check out the law firm of Stephen Reck and Scott Camisar at stephenreck.net. STEPHENRECK.net.
The Shamrock Show.
Shamrock Show, episode 21. First episode in 2021, so the numbers kind of work out. Would have had this out a little bit earlier, recorded back on Tuesday this week. But as you guys know, Wednesday the world went a little bit crazy, so I figured out of sensitivity of all the high emotions that are going on, I wouldn't try to push my stuff out there. And also, on a selfish note, I want you guys to see this stuff, and I know that you guys are all going nuts on social media with the DC incident, so figured I'd give it a little bit to cool off and give you guys something to check out for the weekend. My guest Chris is a super interesting guy. We hit a lot of different topics. We started off, just kind of reminiscing about school. We went to school together, but he's a writer, and he dips out some of his new book. He's got a poetry book out, and Before You Judge Poetry, yeah, it's really cool, man. And maybe you don't need that buffer, but someone like me might, and you'll see that he kind of gave me that same buffer. But check it out, man. We go from politics and to writing and just the process, and then he even hits me with a surprise Q&A at the end, which I wasn't expecting. It was a lot of fun. Shamrock Show episode 21. Like, share, subscribe, all that. Just a couple of housekeeping notes. In this episode, we had some audio difficulties. His volume was really low and mine was really high, so I did my best to equalize it out. When I was raising his volume up while he's talking, you might hear me sipping water or coughing or something like that. I tried to cut a lot of that out. We ran almost 2 hours on the podcast, so I did chop and screw this a little bit, but it doesn't jump around too bad. Also, at one point you're going to hear, we got a pet bird here. His name's Charlie, and Charlie went a little bit nuts, and you'll definitely hear him in the background. I hope it's not too distracting. On my next podcast, you'll see I've got some new equipment. You'll see I got this new backdrop for 2021, courtesy of my better half, Melissa, and a really dope ring light, which you can't see, but hopefully gives me a little bit of glow on my pale face. Got a new mic I'm going to break out next week and some other new recording equipment. So bringing better quality to you this year. I appreciate all the love and support. Again, like, subscribe, share, all that stuff. With no further ado, Shamrock Show 21, Drinking from Snowglobes.
So I'm to understand that you're no longer afraid of clowns. I pulled this off the shelf for no reason.
I'm not afraid of clowns anymore. I don't like them. I don't want them near me. I don't want to hang out with them. I don't want to know them. I don't want them knocking on my door. But I'm not, cripplingly afraid of them the way that I was, back in the day, as you know.
Well, it's a pretty common phobia, but I had never heard of it until about 7th or 8th grade when it came up with you at some point, and I was so blown away because all I knew were like funny circus clowns, and I didn't really know where it came from. But I don't know, were you exposed to it as a child a little too young or something? What happened?
I checked out. I knew it. That came a little bit later when I was like super young. I had this there's this creepy clown doll that I just didn't like its vibe. It kind of tweaked me out. And then, the more I sort of learned about clowns, the less I enjoyed them. And, it was funny because, at that age you have this imagination, and we had created this whole really fucked up mythology about them and whatnot to kind of feed into that. So there was a natural visceral thing. I've learned about phobias since then, and so things like sharks or wolves or
sharks.
Fire.
I'm a big shark one.
I'm sorry. I won't use the S word. So things like that, they are actually, biologically, epigenetically there's reasons for it. There's reasons to be afraid of fire, like as a human, biological creature, or wolves, or that kind of thing. But like, I don't know, balloons or clowns or things like that are it's a newer kind of fear that doesn't necessarily map all the way back to our to our earlier days as cave dwellers or whatever.
So you live in Salem, Mass. I've never known anyone who lives in Salem, Mass.
Yeah, Salem's a really, really cool place. I've lived in a bunch of different places in my adult life, and I'm really glad I ended up here. I think it does reflect my value system. It's very inclusive. Like, everyone's too busy hustling, doing whatever they're doing to care if someone else is gay or someone else is a goth or someone else is, even clowns, man. And like, I'm okay. Like, I might have a neighbor, like the Satanic Church, they're my neighbors, if there was a house of clowns, a tiny house with like 12 clowns living in it.
little tiny car out front.
Yeah. Little tiny car out front. Or if there was like a bouncy castle that like, like live there. Like, I don't care, man. I'm too busy like doing my own stuff to worry about like, how you're living your life or how large your car is.
Welcome to the Shamrock Show. Sit down, have a listen, and go fuck yourself.
The Shamrock Show.
I think we just kind of crashed into it, and I think that's great. You know what I mean? It's kind of like a burst opening into the show. But people listening, this is my childhood friend, Chris O'Keefe, writer extraordinaire. Got a lot of stuff going on, and I'm really looking forward to chatting this up with you, man.
Yeah, definitely, Sean. Even though like we haven't, talked a lot on the phone, I think we, there's sort of the good version of social media where the people that you have been able to get a glimpse into their lives and feel like you've been connected with them and whatnot. So from you opening the green room back in the day to Spills to everything in between, like, I've always enjoyed keeping an eye on you and watching like your drive, your motor, your hustle, and seeing like a lot of parallels between places that we ended up in our lives, even though we ended up in different geographic locations. I think a lot of the early conversations that we had and early values that we shared helped us try all these different things and vibe with all these different people and like take on different projects and do things that were hard, not just do the easiest thing that was in front of us. So yeah, shout out to you.
All right, well, that's good for me. I'm out. I think we have a lot of similarities. Because we came from the same kind of area, right? Like, I feel like we both went to a school that had like a lot of like more really rich kids. We weren't really the rich kids, and we I don't know, the school that we came from, man, it's just this little town in Connecticut called Griswold, and there's just a lot going on there. It's been there was a strange dynamic within the students and within the different parts of the town and the high school, and it's led to, I would say, more interesting and sad and exciting life paths for different people we went to school with than you would think would come from a little town like that.
Yeah. Sometimes when I tell stories about, when we were really young, people don't necessarily believe me because they think Connecticut, Greenwich, whatever.
Right.
Our existence was a little bit different, like it wasn't quite that affluent kind of existence. There was people of all kinds. We had a small graduating class. I think our graduating class was 110, 115.
Yeah.
Something like that. I believe I was ranked 112 out of 115 or something like that.
Really? That surprises me. I was probably right behind you then, but that surprises me. I would have said that you were in the top 30-ish, I would have guessed.
No, I don't usually figure things out until like the end. Like, I didn't kind of figure out high school until like the very end. So I had like a strong end of high school, but
yeah, I didn't figure it out till like a couple of years ago. So I was a little bit late,
but that, I think that formative environment of like, I don't know, lots of different kinds of people, lots of, I don't know, a certain amount of turmoil, a certain amount of explosiveness. You know, I think we saw a lot of things. I know. I mean, I don't think I'm speaking out of school because you've talked about this on previous pods, but like, you know, a good amount of fisticuffs going on, and you know, like that's not a thing that we were shy about. And I think like that informs you as you go through different parts of life. If you've just been around it, not to be pro-violence, I'm certainly not pro-violence. I'm certainly not a tough guy. But you when you become acclimated to it because you've seen enough of it, your response to it maybe isn't so alarmist. It's kind of like if I'm if I'm at a bar and like something breaks out, it's more like, hey, knock it off.
Right.
It's not like, oh my God, like what's going on?
I think that being comfortable in uncomfortability is like the key to life. You know what I mean? There's a great quote. It's like the comfort zone is a beautiful place, but nothing grows there. And I think that when you grow up and not everything is just so easy, dude, and like in an office or whatever comes up and dealing with whatever, it's not, your emotions don't get up here because you've lived up here.
Yeah. I mean, we all know those people, like in a normal sort of conversational confrontation, their voices get really shaky, and you know, maybe they're like, what, like why did you say that or whatever, and it's like, what are you talking about? Like, we're just, you know, we were just hashing something out. That wasn't anything. That didn't even show up on my radar.
Right.
But you mentioned like throwing punches, but like, can you still get your leg over your head?
Yeah, I can still throw a head kick. It's the deceptive,
because that's something that the couple times I had the pleasure of watching you work, would always kind of it's like punch, and then all of a sudden, like, did he just 360 dragon kick that kid, or at least brush him back?
Well, so I think a lot of that kind of led to, like, I started doing karate in like 4th grade or something, right? And it wasn't like I would imagine it to be today, where like the UFC is this big famous thing. Like, dude, kids picked on me for doing karate. Like, they would like your boy Mark McGuire would like, what? As I like walk down the hallway, and I was constantly getting into fights. I didn't want to get into fights, but people would literally pick on me for taking something that teaches you how to fight. And it was the most ridiculous thing, but like, it got me into more fights, not because I was learning karate and wanted to go out and beat people up, but people would pick on me because I did karate. It was I still can't do the math on it.
Yeah, that's like a really bizarre PSA for karate. Like learn karate so people will pick on you, so you can use karate to defend yourself.
Well, it's like, and I hope I don't get too offensive with people on here, but it's like, Jesus, like, let me save you. Save you from what? From what I'm going to do to you if you don't let me save you.
Yeah. No, get offensive. I like it.
You know, like, not to like get into like all the worst parts of it, but to come from such a small place, like, we both had close friends who died at gun violence from that school. You know, we both know people who have, a lot of people who have overdosed. The opioid epidemic in that area is crazy, and it's
yeah. And then like you said, there's this really rough point from ages 17 to 22, 25, where like we lost a lot of people. Like, if you go through that yearbook, you lost a lot of people off.
A lot.
And it's not all, you know, there's some car accidents and there's some normal, quote unquote, you know, obviously it's horrible to lose somebody in any way stuff, you know. And that informed my worldview a lot, to, you know, for decisions I made later, for stands that I want to take, for causes I want to support. It's a real shame. Yeah, just really, really, really ugly stuff that is irreversible.
You're a writer, which doesn't surprise me, because you were always really creative, and you know, you always seem to have like a vibe about you where you could come up with some good stuff. And I don't know if it comes from like, let me say this. When I saw you for the first time after high school, after a while, I was surprised at how tall you were. I always remember you being a shorter kid, and I always thought that was like why you were like so witty, or like run off at the mouth, but also why you're so scrappy. As like you said, you're not saying you're like a tough guy, but you're always prepared to cash the checks that you were writing as well. You know what I mean? And I think like I always felt like a lot of it came from that. Like, and all of a sudden you were like 6 feet tall. I was like, oh, what happened to Chris O'Keefe?
Luckily, I didn't have to cash really too many checks. Even though I wrote a lot, I had ran my mouth quite a bit. And it was one of those things that everybody said like, you're in 6th grade, but you can't talk like that in 7th grade. Like, they're going to beat your ass. And then it's like, oh, you keep running your mouth. You're in 7th grade. 8th grade isn't going to be like that. And then it's like, oh, you're going into high school next year. Can't talk like that. And, I was lucky enough. I think I built a lot of alliances, which helped. But yeah, I was like super small until I was like, I feel like I was like 140 pounds till I was like 25 or something.
Yeah.
Was really little up until my early 20s, like so that memory is correct, and that did inform, I think, a lot of the way, sort of socially, the way that I conducted myself, where I would always make sure that I had some friends around who were a lot bigger than me before I said too much.
When did you really like gravitate towards writing? Like, when did you know, like, oh, this is something I can make money off of?
So I laugh because in the context of poetry, right? Like, that's not paying the bills for me. That's what a large part of this conversation might be about. Actually, right out of school, when I was 17 years old, graduated when I was 17. I'm a December birthday, so that was another reason I was so little, is because I was the youngest kid in the class.
Yeah.
I got an opportunity to write. A friend and mentor of mine, the guy that taught me how to play guitar, had started, I don't know if you remember this, Southeastern Connecticut, there was an arts and entertainment monthly newspaper called The Stage. And it was based in Norwich, and we had, distribution throughout like all of New London County and a little bit beyond, maybe down 95 a little bit, Old Lyme, that kind of area. Not quite to New Haven, because they had the Advocate and there was like a little turf war. So right out of high school, I started reviewing albums and going to shows and doing this stuff. And I remember I started college at Eastern Connecticut as a commuter, and I ended up dropping out because I was making $250 a week doing this writing gig. And I was like, why would I go to college? Like, I'm a professional writer. They're not even taking taxes out.
Yeah.
I get to keep all of it, not realizing that I was going to get jacked up later for when tax season came around, because you are supposed to pay taxes on that.
Right.
So that was kind of like the first money that I was making writing. And then when I moved to Boston, that went out. That newspaper went under. I ended up being the managing editor, and that was a great experience. That was a great series of experiences to be able to go to shows and interview bands that I wanted to talk to, and have a press pass that probably got me out of some trouble like a couple times, especially then, where it's like the ability to like forge something wasn't what it is now and whatnot. We're talking about like 99, 2000.
Yeah.
So it's like,
right.
You had a press pass, even police. Like, there was coming back from Worcester from a show that I was taking, photographs at. It's like, we got pulled over, probably shouldn't have been let go between everything that was going on. And show them the press pass, and they were like, yeah, we don't want it. You're like, go ahead. Like, we don't want any of that.
So were you covering more like local music scene, or like bigger? I know you say you're coming from Worcester. Were you seeing like a bigger band at like the Palladium or something, or like were you seeing like bar bands, or what were you doing?
Yeah, that was a show that was 9 Inch Nails with a Perfect Circle opening. That was the first Perfect Circle tour, and they were opening for 9 Inch Nails, and I was able to take photos like in the press pit for the first 3 9 Inch Nails songs, and it was with like a weird little digital camera back in the day, and was hanging out with like the 45-year-old guy. I was like 17, 18 at the time, and then we had like the 45-year-old like sales manager guy who would like be me now. Would be like,
yeah,
hey, you want to like if like I had got like press kits and got to like hang out with some kids, I'd be like, hey, yeah, that's awesome. Like, I'll just be like the older guy that goes along. So it hanging out with him as my plus one, and just like getting free drinks, getting like that kind of stuff, like,
yeah,
which at 18, at any age, of free beer tastes really good, but like, at 18, kind of gray area, because again, you have this press pass.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite performance from that time that you went to see? Is there like a band that sticks out? Or
Yeah, I think the Flaming Lips had done an album called The Soft Bulletin in around 2000, and I got to do an interview with them and got tickets, and they were playing in Hartford at the Webster.
Yeah.
That show was amazing, for so many reasons. It taught me a lot about, I think it's a lot to ask somebody to sit there and watch you for 45 minutes or an hour and a half, no matter what you're doing. And so like adding value, like making it more interesting, making it a spectacle. There was, if you've ever seen a clip of a Flaming Lips show, there's lots of confetti and there's lots of strobe lights and all this stuff. And the songs are good too. But it's like more and more and more. So it's like, if you don't like this, maybe you like this. If you don't like the song, then maybe you like the video. And they had a situation where you could go and you could trade in your driver's license at this little kiosk, and they gave you a set of headphones. And the set of headphones was doing a live stereo mix. The sound guy was doing a live stereo mix of the show. So you put it on over your ears, and in addition to the booming drums and everything that's happening, get this like beautiful stereo mix of like a little keyboard over here, a little keyboard over there. Right. That's one that definitely sticks out, as a show that informed me as an artist, but also informed me as a writer. And the way that they took time out of their day to speak to our stupid little newspaper that had no footprint at all, and like took time to talk. That's one that definitely sticks out.
That's awesome, man.
Time to pay the bills. Somebody's got to keep the lights on. The Shamrock Show podcast is brought to you by Beard Octane. Check out beardoctane.com for all your beard needs. They got great smelling beard oils, got lotions, washes, conditioners, combs, brushes, all the good smell conditioning type manly stuff you need to keep yourself looking fresh, whether you're in quarantine or not. Check out beardoctane.com and use code Shamrock10 for 10% off. Doing a little giveaway on my page for some of their stuff, so check that out as well. Check them out on all their social media. They're good at reposting and sharing if you tag them. Beardoctane.com, whether you got a little beard like I've got right now or you're growing it out big time, beardoctane.com's got you covered. Code Shamrock10. And like I said, check out my giveaway on my Facebook and Twitter page to get some free good smelling stuff. beardoctane.com.
I know you told me you dropped out of college twice. I did the same thing, man. But like I said, we have a lot of different parallels, and it's funny. Although I never did go back to finish, but I found what I consider to be an education in a different, just an outer loop. But I also dropped out for a job that I thought was awesome. I got sold on. Dude, you're never going to believe this. I went to apply for this job. And they don't even tell you what it is, right? There's like an ad in the paper, and it was like...
Was it Cutco Knives?
No, but it's along the same lines. They're like, must be a sports-minded individual, must like working with the opposite sex, must like to listen to music. I'm like,
Shaq.
Oh, yeah. So you go in, and like the first day, they don't even tell you what the job is, right? So you sit in this meeting, and it's like me and a couple of other friends also all went into it. Like Jimmy Bletchy was one of them. Yeah. And then the next day, they break out the Kirby vacuum. And they're like, you're going to be in sales for the first 30 days, but after that, we have all these different departments. And like, long story short, one day the manager was drunk and needed a ride home, and I gave him a ride home, and he was like telling me, it's like, well, there's really no other departments, but if you make it 30 days selling vacuums, you know that you're not going to want to go to another department. That means you're making money, but no one ever really does that. But he talked me into dropping out of college. He's like, you're going to make so much money doing this, blah, 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 blah. And that was the first time I dropped out of college. I was to sell Kirby vacuums. And I thought, my parents were like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, no, like there's so much money to be made. And blah, and at that time I thought $500 was a lot of money. You know what I mean? I couldn't, I was like, if you didn't sell anything, as long as you did 15 appointments, you still got a paycheck for like $350 or $500, whatever it was. It seemed like a lot of money to me. But if you got to like 13 appointments, you hadn't sold anything, they just stopped giving you appointments. So there's no more appointments. So you never really got paid unless you actually sold something. But that was why I dropped out of college, to sell vacuum cleaners door to door.
Hey, that's all right. I think exploration is good. I think most young people shouldn't go directly to college, unless like. You should explore. You should be a cab driver. You should sell vacuum cleaners. You should be a magician's assistant. You should, do whatever. Like coach intramural hockey and go, be a tour guide in Salem, like a haunted tour guide. Do all of these different things before you take on tens of thousands of dollars in debt, because that's another absolute travesty of our generation, is the amount of student loan debt that people have taken on for very low value degrees, you know, for 4-year humanities degree. You know, the amount of debt that I had for a 4 years humanity degree and a 2-year audio degree that I eventually went back for was insane. Like, it was like dentist money, you know?
Yeah. What do you think of like these different bills they bring up to wipe out student debt?
Absolutely. They should
Yeah.
wipe it all out. Wipe it all out. I don't, you know, and we should do more, and we should do more for other people that didn't go to school as well. I think sometimes the argument ends up being, but what about, and it's like, well, if we can do good for one segment of people, we should do good for that segment of people.
I agree. I don't think you should sacrifice the opportunity to help somebody just because you can't help someone else in a different, unrelated way. You know, I don't think, and I've seen those arguments, and I don't think there's really a correlation to, like myself, I have no student debt. I didn't, you know, my girlfriend has a ton of student debt. So if they were going to wipe hers out, awesome. You know what I mean? I don't think, you know, and I've also seen people say, oh, what about the people who paid all their money back? But I think at some point there has to be a beginning. Like, you can't be like, oh, we're not going to legalize gay marriage because none of these people 20 years ago were allowed to get married. Well, no, we have to start somewhere. We can't be like crabs in the bucket holding. You can't be mad that someone else is going to get help if it's not directly coming out of your pocket. You know what I mean? Yep.
It's, you know, really nefarious stuff. So I say clear it. I say clear it all. And I'm, you know, I'm not in a position where I'm in a tough spot anymore. It took a lot of years, a lot of money to get out from under it, but you know, I'm doing okay now, and I still say, give it, you know, save the next people. Like, people can't afford to buy a house. People can't afford to take the steps that they want to take to have the kind of lifestyle that
you think you're getting by going to college. Like, you think you're going to take on this debt to go to college to get this job so that you can do all these things, and then you can't do these things because you're paying off the college. Like, how many people do you know with degrees that still are like in the hospitality industry serving drinks and whatnot because there's more money in it than in the jobs that they went to get, or there aren't jobs to be had in the field that they went for. You know, it's kind of tough, man. I think, like, personally, I think that at a minimum, you know, I think that community college should be free, and I don't know a lot about politics. I would, you know what I mean? And I don't think, you know, when I say things like that, people are like, oh, you're a socialist. And I don't know about that. I just think that you improve your society if you can educate them more. And I'm not saying people should go to UConn for free or people should go to medical school for free, but your basic community college, if someone wants to go, they graduate high school and they can make a certain grade point average, and while like they're going to get a better job and spend more money in the community. Like, I don't understand the anti-thought process to free education. I think that, you know, as a country, we're like 26 in the world in education. I don't understand why you would want to do things to help that.
Yeah, we're seeing some of the manifestation of a lack of just basic awareness of media literacy and fact checking and science and things like that. So I think, a little bit of more investment in education would do us all a lot better. When it comes to holding people accountable, left or right, our elected officials work for us, and it's our job to hold them accountable. And the way to hold them accountable is through fact and through understanding what they're doing, and not having a firewall of activist propaganda with which we're understanding the world. Like, let's give people a direct connection to the facts that help them render an understanding of the world and the society which they're participating in. I firmly believe that for us to have a fighting chance, media literacy needs to be a thing that we invest in. Media literacy, like, so the way that I think about it with media literacy is, like, before the FDA put on those little caloric values on the back of food, you didn't know how much sugar was in it. You didn't know how many calories. If you're like, oh, these things are probably good for me because I just assume that they are. At some point, we decided there was going to be some oversight, and we would give people the value. Now, some people, including myself, will sometimes eat some Twinkies and eat some some things that aren't good for you. But overall, the baseline understanding of what we're putting into our bodies has benefited from having oversight, from having consumer protections when it comes to that. So a private entity can't just lie about what they're giving to us. We don't have that in media right now, and so people have no idea what they are consuming on the left or the right. and they don't understand the rigor, and they don't understand the left-right bias of what they're doing. There's a wonderful media bias chart. You can just search the media bias chart that kind of breaks things down a little bit by where, kind of from up to down to like journalistic rigor, and left to right to liberal conservative bias. And you can
talking by like outlet, like where like
yep,
CNN or Fox or wherever falls. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So you have MSNBC and you have Fox News, kind of like low rigor, left, right. Up top, you have kind of PBS, and you have Wall Street Journal on the right, and you have, whatever. And so it gives you an idea of, okay, what's my media diet look like? How healthy are these things that I'm consuming? How slanted are they on the left or the right? If you're reading things from, blue socialist revolution now.com then like, let's balance that out a little bit. And if you're getting your news from like, red freedom fighter patriot.com, maybe you should balance that out a little bit too.
Well, it surprises me that people haven't figured that out more. Like people who have been using the internet for and on social media, the misinformation is ridiculous, and people don't seem to understand algorithms, where like Facebook is an echo. You say things and like, well, no, everyone thinks like I do, or, Facebook will algorithm to what's getting the most reactions for you. So if you put out every day, you love Trump, you hate Trump, whatever it is, and you're going to get 100 comments on it, you're going to it's going to steer news articles to you and all these things that are going to back up what you're saying. So people have, like you said, a poor media diet, and they think that they don't. It's like you go into the store and you buy the thing that says natural. Oh, it's natural. It must be good for me. You know what I mean? I really like that analogy you use. So I just want to curve it in that way.
Yeah. Nutrigrain bar, right? You think you look at a Nutrigrain bar, you think it's a good thing. You actually read it. It's a candy bar. It's a piece of pie in foil, a flat piece of pie. I would crush one of those right now.
Hell yeah.
And that's okay. So yeah, I think the fundamental getting people to understand the relationship between it's like to use that analogy again, it's like it's instead of teaching everyone every single recipe and what's good and what's bad, let's change people's fundamental relationship to the nutritional content of what they're consuming. And can we do that? Can we do that with media?
A lot of people don't. A lot of people just take with a grain of salt. Oh, my dad shared this article and said this, it must be true. You know what I mean? Where I think that I've seen a study where it's like senior citizens or people who are over, our parents' age are the ones that share a lot of misinformation because they started using social media late. And that's why I think social media is a gun. I've been talking about it on like every podcast I've done, but I deleted my Instagram over the summer. I deleted my personal Twitter, and then I made one just for the podcast. And then I was off Facebook forever, and I've just gone back on. I post my podcast and then I uninstall the app, and I want people to be able to see the podcast. And
yeah, I think it's a tool. I think all these things are tools, and they work for us, just like the fucking politicians, right?
Right.
So social media platforms work for us, and you should be getting more than you're giving, for information, for value, for all that stuff. And if it helps as a promotional tool, you should use it for that. If it helps as a tool to see your nieces and nephews or whatever it is, use it for that. And anything else that feels dirty, like get it out. Or I like your nuclear option. Like delete it. Just get it off your device. Absolutely.
You're right. It's just you'd make sure you get more than you give, and I definitely think that's a great way to look at it, because it is at its fundamental root a great marketing tool, and it is a great way to keep in touch with people who you wouldn't normally get to keep in touch with or see. You know what I mean? There are positives to it, but I just feel like it's kind of I feel like it's peaked, and it's on the back nine now, to me personally, like what the usefulness of it versus the harmfulness.
Totally. And if you're going on and you're installing it back on your device and using it for promo and deleting it, and in an hour, congratulations, you just passed 1,000 subscribers, right?
Yeah, thanks.
And you're able to grow your audience and get your stuff out there, and then get the fuck off before any sort of poison leaks into your brain.
Yeah.
Then that's a net positive, and you're winning. I see it. It's not just in social media. It's in algorithmic media platforms in general, whether it's Pandora, which I will never like. I'll leave a restaurant if they're playing Pandora, especially if they're they didn't pony up the $7 or whatever. Yeah, I have to hear commercials. I'll just be like, can I just get that to go? And Amazon is another one. Like for this book that I'm doing, like as I started like figuring out the way to do it, I was reading and all these different online resources, and here's what you do, and in your first 10 days you got to do this, and then your second 10 days you got to do this, and here's how you beat the algorithm, and here's how you game the system. And I was like, this is like the opposite of why I wanted to write poetry. Like I wrote poetry this year so that I could leave my desk, go to the beach, and like with a notebook and connect with the world in some way, right? And so, or at least witness the world or respond to it. And so I decided, I'm just selling the book like merch now. I'm selling the book the same way that I would sell T-shirts at a show. It's not on Amazon. At some point, maybe it will be, but for now, the first couple editions, you can order it through me. It's been awesome. I get the readout of everyone who's ordered books. I write them a note. I see where they're living now. A lot of people from my past who I maybe haven't connected with. It's a moment to package them up something. Even like folks that I do talk to, like my dad, like I don't usually write my dad letters or like write him a note or something like that, but he came through, he bought a couple of books, and it was a nice moment to sit there, have everything printed out. My wife got me a typewriter for Christmas and kind of like typing out these things, these artifacts so that everyone's getting something custom with theirs, these excerpts, and just creating this thing that's like very, very hands-on, and I don't have to track the algorithm, and I don't have to worry about, am I underperforming, or beg people, hey, can just 2 more people buy it this week? Because if that happens, then I get on this list. And if that happens, then that means, it's this carrot of like, you can always get, it's like your Kirby vacuum people, right? It's like, well, you're almost there. But if you do just a little bit more, and before you know it, you're pulling out your wallet to pay for your own books because
you want to get on. Yeah.
You want to get to that next year.
So when you emailed me about this book and you're like, I know you don't like poetry, but I felt like that was quite the assumption. I'm not saying you were wrong, but I was like, what am I putting off that makes him have to preference my friend sending me a book? Like, I know you're not going to like this, but
tell me, well, what's your favorite book of poetry that you've read recently?
Listen, Chris, do you know my senior year, I did an independent study in Jack Kerouac with Mr. Moore.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I wanted to write raps in those days, and Mr. Moore, in your senior year, they let you kind of create classes if you knew to ask about it. Mr. Moore came to me, he's like, hey, tell that you want to do an independent study in poetry, and he's like, I'm going to help you with your raps by doing this study in this guy, Jack Kerouac. And that was 1999. That's the last time I read a poem book. Other than Shel Silverstein, Where the Sidewalk Ends, I'll read that till the day that I die.
Now, Sean, I don't want to say that, but I'm glad I was right there. But I was an educated guess because I watched your episode. I'm sorry. What was the young lady's name that you interviewed? The awesome author.
Oh, Jax Miller, the one that did the murder.
Miller.
Yeah. Yep.
Yes. And you said multiple times during that, before 2020, I haven't read a book in 10 years. I used to hate reading. I just picked up reading again. So when I said when I assumed like, oh, Sean's probably not like super into like the French modernists, that was based on the fact that you had said yourself that you hadn't opened a book in a decade.
Fair enough. So I did read a couple excerpts from your book, and especially the Uncle Chicken one really resonated a lot. And it also made me, it was funny, I was thinking of you the other day because you mentioned it's the only poem I've ever read with NBA Jam in it.
This is my first collection. Takes place pretty much over the last 15 years. And I think it, like we were talking about our particular origin stories, a lot of this stuff is like a kid who grew up where we grew up, kind of seeing different parts of the world and like finding magic in it and like being astounded in it and by it, or looking back and seeing heroism in these figures that maybe aren't with us anymore, or how do we what lens do we put them in? So yeah, shout out to NBA Jam. I try I try to make everything a little more approachable and a little less academic when possible.
Let me ask you this: what qualifies as a poem? Like when I think poetry, and I know, my first thought, and I already know it's wrong because I was educated otherwise, but like I think of rhyming things, you know what I mean? Like, or a haiku. But like when I'm looking at your poems, they're kind of stories that seem to be aligned differently. What differentiates a poem like from a story?
A lot of these are what I would call like narrative prose poems, which is funny because it's not the kind of poetry I tend to read a lot. I tend to read more fractal image driven stuff that's more like, shout out to MF Doom, right? RIP. When we're talking about hip hop lyricists, that's more dense, image driven, sound frictive, that kind of stuff. And so these tend to be longer line narrative, story driven, more of the heart than of the head in some cases. But where you draw the line, so those categorizations, haiku that you're talking about, limerick, sestina, sonnet, there's all these different forms. Obviously, that's poetry. I think it's the poetry zone I would put is like, is it not prose, right? Is it not just like a story, whether it's narrative, nonfiction, or fiction, or something like that? Is it something beyond that kind of story? Is something different than that kind of storytelling? It can fall into the poetry zone. With lyrics, where that's a thing where sometimes people have a tough time delineating. And for me, what I say the difference between lyrics and poetry is, lyrics you get to go with, you get to bring them out and escort them, and you get to accompany them with a melody, and you get to accompany them with an arrangement, and you can say yeah or 1 2 3 4 between them, and it just kind of works. And it doesn't they have a chaperone out there if you're putting out original music. Poems, they just survive in the wilderness. You have to make them rugged enough and sturdy enough to just live there, because you're not going to be there to say, hey, the stress actually goes on this, or you should read this line break like this. Like, people are just going to either read them or not. And I think that's an important delineation when we talk about the difference between lyrics, music lyrics, and poetry. And then, I mean, beyond that, I think there is such a thing as poetic license. And if you want to repurpose the backs of recipes, or you want to, create some sort of Mad Libs system where you're replacing, you're creating this machinery to make poetry for you, and you're replacing nouns and doing stuff and doing it that way. I think that's okay too. I think that's a really long-winded way of kind of dodging the question, Sean, but maybe providing a little bit of insight.
Yeah, I mean, I think that your last sentence was right. You kind of dodged the question, but gave a little insight. You know what I mean? And that's great. You know what I mean? Because that's, to me, is almost poetry in itself, to say something without saying it. You know what I mean? To let the person decide what that actually means. And how long? Hold on. Drinking from Snowglobes. Why that title? It's a great title. Tremendous title.
Okay, I mean, not to waffle anymore, but like I don't know, it's just poetry. Emily Dickinson said, I'm gonna butcher the quote, but it's like, poetry makes me feel cold and like the top of my head got chopped off. And like sometimes you hear that whether it's a lyric in rock music or a line in hip hop or something like that, where you're like, oh, this is unknowable. I just want to continue to think about what this could mean. And that's a line that had legs, where the appeal of a snow globe, a self-contained world that's limited but also unknowable. How do you interface with those? Can you interface with them? I'm saying too much. It's poetry.
No, I'm digging it, man. I like I said, I enjoy listening to your riff. You also have had a long-standing run as a musician as well. You've been through a few bands, and I even had you down. I think it was my first year at Sunsets. You came down, and you guys you guys played, and that was a fun time. A lot of people from high school came out. And what do you prefer? Do you have a preference over between writing and music, or do they blend in together so much? Or you're to me, you're like a super artistic person, and like to me, this is my creative outlet. I don't write, you know what I mean? I'm not an artistic person, but like I like to have a creative outlet where I try to put thoughts together. I think, oh, this person will be interesting to talk to, and I'd like to talk to them about this or ask them about that. And doing this podcast for me, it's just, even if nobody listens to it, it's a creative outlet. And when I see somebody who, like you, who is a writer, who is a musician, and is involved in podcasting, which we'll get to, it's really impressive to me.
Poetry. So you have two different things that you're doing on this podcast right now. You have what we're doing right now, back and forth. You're playing tennis with someone. You're kind of figuring stuff out. You know, you go in with a structure, but you obviously change, and maybe you go down different paths that you're not thinking about. And that's more like music. And then you have this solo expedition that you do, that you've been getting better and better at, like your history of strip club episode, where it's a solitary exercise, and you're workshopping this thing that you've lived through, and you've thought about the beats over and over and over again, whether you wrote an actual draft or not, but you've thought about it. You've told these stories in different pieces, and you're putting them all together. That's more like putting together a book of poetry. And that's how I would suggest that maybe you might relate to that, the difference between a collaborative environment like music versus a solitary environment like poetry.
This podcast is brought to you by the Second Chance Boxing Gym in Preston, Connecticut. The Second Chance Gym is an old school boxing gym with some no school flavor. Check out the Second Chance Boxing Gym on Facebook. Give them a ring, man. Go see my man Jody. He's the coach down there. Tell him Shamrock sent you for a free day in the gym. Whether you're looking to knock off a few pounds or get in the ring and knock somebody out for real, Second Chance Gym is where I train. Come check them out. Second Chance Gym on Facebook, Preston, Connecticut. Hit them up. Come get your free day. Tell them Shamrock sent you. Come get in shape. Have some fun. Or if you want to compete, it's a great. They got a great program there too. They'll get you in the ring in no time. Second Chance Boxing Gym, Preston, Connecticut.
Your feedback on the episode meant a lot too, and I was surprised at how well that went over. People really seemed to be into it. I mean, I guess maybe I shouldn't be, just because the topic, you know, if you say mafia and boobs, people are going to turn their head, I guess. But I have some other stuff in my head that I'm playing with, as far, like, when I went to do this podcast originally, it was not about me. It was like, oh, I know some really interesting people who have told me their stories. I'm like, well, I think other people would like to hear that story. You know what I mean? Because I enjoyed hearing it. So then I want to put these interesting people out there. And then it's just kind of grown into different stuff. And now I see it going in a different direction, where I have a few more monologues like that planned, where I think it's just something kind of interesting that people will dig or they won't, but I'll put it out there. And that's kind of the process for myself, because every time I do one of these, it's very vulnerable. Like, oh, what if people think this sucks, or what if people like think whatever. But it's good to do. It's something that I enjoy, not the rush of it, but like when people are like, oh man, that was dope, or I really got something from this, or I didn't know about that. It's cool. So this podcast is growing. Like, I listen to a lot of true crime podcasts now I've been listening to, and it's just people not even telling their own stories. They're just like telling other stories that I didn't know. And like, I'll throw them on when I'm in the shower. Like, oh, that was a cool story. So then I've been looking into some different stuff, and I say, I think I might do some like that, where I just kind of do a little investigation. I put together my own piece, and I'll do something like that has nothing even to do with me. This podcast is going to go in a lot of different directions that I didn't plan on going, for sure. Like I said, it was never meant to be about me. It was meant to be about you. Like, oh, hey, I think Chris is interesting. I think my other friends will think Chris is interesting. Let me put him on.
So you mentioned true crime stuff as a lens of personal storytelling, and I think that's absolutely true. I've done some episodes of a show called Disgraceland, which is like rock and roll true crime or hip hop true crime.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
And I did the Snoop Dogg episode, and did a lot of research about it. And it ended up being written through my lens of how I remember that time of the MTV Movie Awards, of him stopping on the downbeat of the last performance of Murder Was the Case and saying, I'm innocent when he had an open case, right? Like,
Yeah.
like he was actively going to court, during that time. And that was a crazy way to understand the legal process, and the artistic process. And thinking about, the way that, like, that G-funk and the way that early Dre music and the way that all that stuff, like, brought me so much joy. It continues to bring me so much joy. My wife Angela got me a vinyl of a vinyl record of Doggy Style.
Yeah.
For Christmas, and it fucking slaps. It's awesome. But looking at that, whatever music you're talking about, as I went through that journey, it was my story. In addition to being, there's the research that you do, but then there's also the way that you remember things, and the good true crime, especially if it's pop culture related. It has to do with, where were you during this? What do you remember about this? How did this affect you? In what way? How did you consume this story at the time? Because that's all personal. This stuff's all wrapped up in the fabric of our society, and how, it's a bigger story than just that incident or just that person. And it relates to all of us. So I think that can be a really, really fun exercise. And I would encourage you, if you're going to do a true crime thing, pick a subject that you have some sort of ambient relationship to.
I also, when it's all said and done, man, I'm looking forward to telling the legend of Robbie Thompson, man. Once it's I want to give him a good memory, but I want to put out, the saga of what happened to him, and the people listening that have no idea what we're talking about. It's a friend of mine who was killed in a shooting last October, and he was just a wild dude. He was always just a crazy cat. So I'm looking forward to doing that. And, just what you were talking about, telling a true crime from a personal narrative, that's one for me that will be like that. I know it's not what you're saying, but I mean, it'll be on that wavelength.
I hate it. I remember him as a little kid,
Yeah.
And he was not a little kid. He was not a little kid later on at all. Yeah. I remember you saying, I think it was in one of your interviews, because you stepped in the ring before.
Yeah, twice. Yeah.
And you were just talking about how, like, there's like no different, like, he didn't see the different, like, his self-awareness.
Oh, yeah, man. He was so cool, even though he hadn't prepared at all to do it. He didn't train, and but like for me, right, when I was warming up in the back, like there was like, dude, I can't feel my legs right now, and it's not the fight. It's like, you don't want to look like an idiot in front of all 1,000 people. You know what I mean? Like, I'll fight the same guy in the parking lot, no problem. But making that walk from the locker room to the ring, like, people have bailed on that. It's not uncommon for guys to disappear on like amateur shows, because that's where it all comes down to. And it's not because they don't want to fight the guy. It's because they don't want to fight the guy in front of their friends and family who they've been telling that they've been training for a while. But Robbie was in the back, dude, just cool as a cucumber, hitting pads, talking to people. Like, I was so jealous of him in that moment. I was like, how, like, just unbothered. His heart rate would have been the same as it would have been, sitting home watching TV, and that was really impressive, and that's his mindset like that.
Is there like a micro story about Robbie that you could tell?
Well, what I can tell you is he didn't have the best reputation necessarily with everybody, right? I mean, he's a big, scary guy, getting fights and this and that. But he was the kind of guy that I could be like, yo, I'm in New Hampshire with no gas. It's 4 a.m. and he would come scoop me up. You know what I mean? Like there's like a famous part of, did you ever see the movie The Town?
Yeah.
One of my favorite, and there's like, we got to go somewhere, we got to do something, and you can't ask any questions. The other guy's like, well, whose car are we taking? That's, you know what I mean? Like that was Robbie. And it didn't have to be about violence. I'm just thinking about anything, you know what I mean? He would be there, like, fucking, hey, you want to go grab a beer on a shit day? Yeah, I'm there. He was loyal to a fault. And I think that was one of his biggest problems. He would get into trouble because he'd be loyal to people who would be magnetized to him because he was this huge bodybuilder, scary guy. So people would be around him and draw him into things that he didn't necessarily need to be drawn into, or people would assume certain things about him and just treat him a certain way, be like, oh, yeah, that guy Robbie Thompson, he's this way or that way, so I'm going to approach him this way or that way, and it would just begin to be a self-fulfilling prophecy kind of thing. And to really know him, I have this video, and we're sitting at a restaurant one day, and he's got this shirt, and it says FUFO, and I still have the video this day, and I'm like, Robbie, what does your shirt stand for? And he's like, fuck you, fuck off. And then he starts to giggle. It's like a 2-year-old that said his first swear. You know what I mean? I was like, God, that's him though. That's the kid I know. You know what I mean? So you have a lot going on in the podcast world. Like I saw in your Twitter bio that you don't follow me on, that you write for a couple podcasts, and then I want you to explain podcation to me. But what brought you into the podcast world, and what do you got going on, and what have you been doing with it?
So podcast, done a lot of things over the years where you can write a screenplay, or you can write a teleplay, or you can do certain things, and it requires all of this outside funding and red tape and stuff to make happen. So at the beginning of 2018, one of my writing partners, Patrick Urick, and I, we were trying to figure out what we were going to do. And the previous year we had done a pitch for Marvel, and we had done all this stuff. And I was living in New York City at the time. And it required so much outside authorization or money that we didn't have, that I was like, let's do something where we can control our own publishing conditions, where we can kind of choose what folks we want to work with. And that we aren't going to break the bank if we decide to do it. So we drifted toward audio drama, and we decided that if we were able to offer people the thing that everyone is lacking right now is time, right? Like I could drag you into a project that might take 90 days, and maybe it gets launched, maybe it doesn't. And this goes for music, this goes for different kinds of writing, this goes for drama, whatever. But if you can offer someone, if you say, hey, if you give me 48 hours or 72 hours of your time, we've built this system that will allow you to walk away with a credit, a writing credit or an acting credit or a production credit, and it will get launched and it will have profile. People get really excited about that. And so we built this workflow and this methodology for how do we take X amount of man hours or person hours over a time period and compress it into a weekend. So we're not looking at how do we do something in 72 hours. We're saying, how do we do something with 10 people with 12 hours each, 36 times, we have 350 or 400 hours to do something. That's a quarter. That's like a fiscal quarter of like having a production schedule to do a bunch of stuff. So we created this like super crunchy, geeky methodology called Podcation, and we recruited based on that. And we were able to get, our proposition was, hey, come out to the woods with us and the mountains in San Diego, spend 72 hours with us. We're going to build this dream team, and we're going to walk away with a show. And people really responded to it. We had team members from Gimlet and from The Ringer and all these audio drama sort of legends that wanted to be a part of this. And so we went and we created this show called Jupiter Saloon, which has done really well. The pilot is out now. We'll be doing, hopefully, 2020 was a little weird, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
But hopefully 2021, we should be launching the full first season. And then we decided to do it again. And we did it at the Sound Education Conference. And that's a conference that's put on by Harvard and BU and WBUR, WNYC. And they had heard about our experiments, and they were like, can you do it in 3 hours? And so we were like, well, okay, I think we can make 10 minutes. We can do 10 minutes of a sort of like scripted narrative nonfiction. I think we can do that in 3 hours. And so we did it. We pulled it off. It turned out so well that they had us present at the keynote in front of all these people. We went out right before we sort of opened for the History of Rome guy, which was kind of cool. And we did it again, and then we were getting ready to do our second big on location thing in April of 2020, and that got preempted. So we did a virtual version instead, which was very, very low profile. But that's kind of Podcation. It's this idea of maximizing, creating this like crazy sabermetric system of efficiencies where if you can pour all this talent into it and you're going to get something that you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. It's not like a 24-hour film fest thing where it's like, that's pretty good for a 24-hour film fest thing.
Yeah.
It's just as good as everything out there. It sounds as good. It looks as good. It's written as well. It's acted as well. Fidelity wise, all that stuff. We've kind of designed around the idea of creating, a competitive product. So that's kind of Podcation. Does that make sense?
So that's really dope, man. So what is Jupiter Saloon going to be then? Is it like, what's the backstory on what that is?
So Jupiter Saloon, super simple concept. It's a dive bar in space, and one of the things is that you can pay your tab by telling a story instead of paying with credits or whatnot. So it's this serial drama, but it also has this anthology element where we can play with different genres. Because you could come in and you could
you tell whatever, dude. That's really gnarly, man.
So you could tell us a swashbuckling adventure or a straight horror story or whatnot, and then that becomes scripted as well. So it allows us to play with different things. So it's written. We had sort of casted it and then got kind of interrupted by everything, and so we'll have some episodes coming out this year.
Where can people get your book?
It is at drinkingfromsbowglobes.square.site. So once again, this is fulfilled directly by me. There's a version of it. There's a deluxe version of it that, in addition to the book itself, which is pretty good, I would have to say, it's an autographed version, and there's some ephemera and different pieces. We have some alternate covers that we've put into these kind of bookmark strips. Molly Scannell did the cover, which is absolutely gorgeous. It's based on a painting by Matthew Chamberlain, Portland, Maine, amazing fine artist, and kind of got those two together. And he provided the raw materials, and she does this crazy collage stuff. She created this beautiful sort of cover collage thing. So the deluxe edition has some alternate covers by her. I'm also pulling out early drafts, handwritten drafts, and kind of typing notes on top of them and adding these one-of-a-kind little artifacts that go with the book as well. So people have responded really well to that, and like I said, it's been nice to have an excuse to either make a new friend and write them a letter and really thank them, or to reconnect with some folks that haven't spoken with in a really long time. So that's where you can get the book, and that's what you can expect if you are gracious enough to order it.
I don't know if this is too much of imposition and putting you on the spot. Do you feel like reading a piece?
Yeah, sure. I would read a piece. Absolutely. This will be the first time I've actually read poetry out of my own book. I've always been jealous when I do events around here, and I'm always like I've got like all this like loose leaf like
yeah.
And everyone's like, this one's in my third book, and they have like all these different books with like bookmarks and stuff in them. All right, this one's got a strip club in it. Montreal poem. My wife is on stage in a strip club in Montreal, but it's not as bad nor as good as it sounds. She's playing a punk festival with her band, along with Jill, who used to be my drummer, and I love her too. These are the good times, and I have to remind myself of that. It's been years since anybody died, and we'll all spend time in hospitals and graveyards at some point, but not today. Today is free admission and drink tickets. Back in Massachusetts, if people are smoking on their porches at 8 a.m., it's because they're wearing sweatpants and they're forging prescriptions and sucking sugary coffee. But here it's because they're multilingual and young and hugging like fire escape gargoyles.
See, like, that's not at all. Like, I will read a book of that because that's really dope, man. And I really truly enjoyed it. I'm not just like talking shit here, you know. But I think it's when you talk poetry, it's not what people think, you know. And it's I think of sappy words rhyming together, having to do with lakes and streams and boundless love. You know what I mean? Like not forging prescriptions in Lowell, Mass, and going to score some oxy. You know what I mean?
Hey, it means a lot that you'd use those words because those words weren't in the poem, right? So that means it evoked something for you. Lowell wasn't brought up, oxys weren't brought up, but you got it. You got that in there. Maybe I could do one more quick one.
Yeah.
The books are starting to arrive at people's houses now, and 2 different people texted me last night and said that's the one. So this is called Rice's Beach Poem. It was written in 2019, and I think the dates are even more important this year because I wanted to do this anyway with the dates so that people understood, hey, this is a younger man writing this, or younger person writing this, or this is me now, or whatnot. But like now, that Montreal poem, which was written in 2019, it feels like 1,000 years ago, and like the sentiment of the ease and the relaxation and whatnot, like it falls into like a really sad relief now when we look at what 2020 was like and whatnot.
Okay.
So Rice's Beach poem. Rice's Beach, and we're fighting the hangover, and the cuvee is cold, and the water is warmish, and these kids are playing spike ball, and I can't figure out the scoring system. One fires up the Bluetooth speaker, and I see before me a high variance range of musical possibilities, but my heart sinks when I realize it's a vile Pandora algorithm seeking to flatten us all, because only a machine would put on a song by train at the beach. We walk, then the rain comes, so we run. Up through the park, past the sculptures, refuge under the trellis, up on the dais where we like to sit and pretend that the elderly public garden volunteers are our servants. But now we serve this old woman by giving her our folding chair, flanking her like imperial guards and telling her, it's okay, you relax, nowhere to go. It's raining anyway.
It paints a picture, like both of them, right? So like the first one, you start off like, oh, my wife's on stage in a strip club, and I'm picturing it. But then you say something else, and then I'm picturing it a different way. You know what I mean? Like I'm watching the story play out, and the same thing with that one, and like Train on the Beach, and they're very visually stimulating. You know what I mean? They really radiate out what you're saying, I think, man.
Thanks, man. That means a lot, and it seriously, it means a lot that the first time I read out loud from my book is with you. That's
awesome. I'm happy to be your first.
All right, now I got a thing I wanted to do for you. You know, you talked about boundless love. There's different levels of love. There's like, you know, filial love. What do you say? Like a mother and a father.
Yeah, familial. Yeah.
Yeah. There's that. There's like a husband and a wife. That love. There's like the love that my wife has for our dog, which is above the love that she has for me. And then I think the purest love that I've ever seen in my life is the love that you have for Shaq.
You're not wrong.
Like the love that you have for Shaquille O'Neal, for that man is like, you know, that's the kind, we all want to be looked at like that. I wish somebody would look at me that way, the way that you look at your LSU fucking 1991 sports Fleer Donruss Ultra, whatever card. I don't know which one you have. So what I wanted to do, I know that you and I are both, you know, we care about our communities a lot. And so what I want to do is I'm going to ask you a series of Shaq trivia questions.
Okay.
And if you get most of them right, then I will donate to the community organization of your choice.
Okay.
We'll do $25 at the community organization of your choice.
Okay.
If you get less than half right, we're going to do Salem Food Pantry.
Done.
And
I am in.
So you're battling for your own community.
No, I'm battling for pride.
And pride. What year was Shaquille O'Neal born in?
Oh crap! I gotta do that. I don't know it offhand. I'd have to do the math. Am I allowed to do math? I promise I'm not Googling. I'm calculator. Using my calculator. 1976.
Bro, it's 1972.
Ah, shit. It's not a good start.
Answers for that. No. Do you know what city Shaquille Rashawn O'Neal was born in?
Newark, New Jersey.
That's correct. Shaquille O'Neal's mother was a Baptist.
Lucille, yes.
The stepfather that raised him most of his life was a different religion. Do you know what religion that was?
Oh wow, I don't. I could tell you his name was Philip Harrison. I could tell you that he was an army sergeant, but I couldn't tell you what his religion was. No, that's not really. That's not a Shaq trivia question though. That's a trivia question of someone else.
All right, we'll take it down a notch then. I didn't.
Well, no, I'm not asking you to take it down. I'm just saying that's not Shaq trivia.
I thought you were platinum level, but maybe you're just like silver. You're just like silver level.
All right, now we're about to go on a tear. Let's see.
All right. What is the name of the high school that Shaquille O'Neal went to? And if you can tell me how many games that high school team lost, that's a risk-free one. That's just a bonus one. The name of the school,
Cole High School.
Okay.
Their jersey is green and yellow, and one loss.
Very, very nicely done, sir. You got the bonus one. And here's one I can give you a multiple choice if you want, because these counting stat ones are kind of hard, right? Because it's like when I ask you to do that. How many 3-pointers did Shaquille O'Neal make in his NBA career?
1.
Are you sure?
Yes, yeah.
That's what I had to.
Because the Milwaukee Bucks while playing for Orlando off the glass at the buzzer.
So as you know, the daddy, like yourself, he likes other competitive one-on-one pugilistic sports, MMA, as you know. But he also was a big WWE fan. Do you know which WWE wrestler he wrestled?
The Big Show.
Big Show is correct. See, you're like rope-a-doping me. You're like, oh, that's too hard.
I'm going to get back to that. At the end, I'm going to get back to you on that one, but continue on.
Can you name any 2 names of Shaq's children? And bonus, if you can name all 4 that came from Shawnee Nelson, I'll give you an extra point.
I know he's got a son, Sharif, who was named after Sharif Abdur-Rahim that played for the Memphis Grizzlies. I've read it at some. Now I think that's the only one I can commit to.
I'm gonna give you
a quarter of point.
I'm gonna give you half one
okay.
and half one off. All right, if either Shaq had to die or you had to lose your right arm, what would you choose?
Oh, geez. My right arm? That's tough. At this point in my life, I think Shaq could go. If you had to ask me while he was still playing, I would lose the arm. He's lived a long, fulfilled life. I still got stuff to do with my right arm. He's got a couple of years on me. We're gonna let Shaq go on that one.
Okay. So even if he was playing for the Celtics, like at that point, you would have let him finish out those 23 games or whatever?
Yeah, I think I would have, because I would have been glad to go see him play with only one arm.
Oh boy.
And I would have got a tremendous parking space, because getting parking in Boston is no fun. I got one arm. You got to let me pull right up. Man, I might even get players parking if I sacrificed it for him,
Yeah, well, no, in this hypothetical, he would never know the sacrifice that you made for him. So
better off. It's better off that way.
It's pure. It needs to be pure. It needs to be a pure sacrifice based on love, not based on any sort of favor.
Cut it off myself.
Last question. Shaquille O'Neal's earliest Player of the Week nod came at what
in his first week in the league.
That's true. All right. Well, unfortunately, it's a tie, so no one gets anything. No, you killed it, man. That's like 7.5 to 2.5. 7.5 right, 2.5 wrong.
Well, so Shaq always performs random acts of Shaqness is in his Twitter bio, but he does a Shaq's Giving and a Shaq Claus. So in that spirit, I'll match your 25 back to Salem, even though I was victorious as Patrick Ewing never was.
It's all right. It's not just the number of rings. Sometimes it's how you lived. It was interesting because I was doing that timeline, just to give you context. I find when I'm interviewing people that it's just like helpful to be like, wait, what happened again? So you're not like backtracking all the time. And I was like, oh, like 93, become a Knicks fan, 94 finals. This is going to be awesome. Like close, like close, but that's okay. We'll get another bite at the apple. No big deal. A couple of rough years, 99, back to the finals. And then it's just been an abusive relationship since then. It's tough.
That's funny. So when it comes to Shaq and the Big Show, so I've got to meet him twice in my life, okay? The first one was the year 2000. I was working at Foxwoods, and a lot of people knew that I was a big Shaq fan there. And I got like word, like, oh, Shaquille O'Neal's coming here tomorrow to do a meet and greet with like high rollers, and it's going to be at whatever time it was. So I wasn't, I worked grave shift, and I showed up, and I was wearing full Lakers uniform, and security was escorting him from where he's coming out of the hotel into the ballroom where he was going to meet all the high rollers, you know what I mean? And I couldn't get into his hotel room or into the ballroom, but I'm in this little strip in the hallway, and there's a bunch of people there because word has gotten out because he didn't come out when he was supposed to, and a few people were standing there, and people coming by like, why is everyone standing here? Like, oh, Shaquille O'Neal's coming out. So he comes out, and there's like 100 people there, and I was like, yo, Shaq. So I have the Superman logo tattooed on my calf, and I was like, yo, I got your tattoo, and he's like, call that kid over here. And I was the only person that got to meet him, so I was like elated. And then maybe 5 years ago, he had an appearance at Mohegan Sun, and he was doing some kind of signing, and it was open to the public. So I got there like 3 hours early, and there was already a line, but they gave out tickets, and it was like they were doing 200 people, whatever. And I had my number, and I was ready to go. And people started taking a long time. Like there was a couple of people in front of me, and he had like 700 posts. He was like clearly a good dealer, you know what I mean? People are doing that. So he decided to cut it off. And I'm not telling this to embellish for the story. I was literally the next person in line, and they told me, no, they said you can't go. And there's two guys in front of me who were only there. They were these geek zit-faced fucking assholes who had only seen him wrestle the Big Show in WWE. They were grown-ass 40-year-old WWE nerds who were just there. They had no idea who he was other than because he wrestled the Big Show. And I'm like, you fucking assholes. Like, and so they got to go. But then later I caught him in the hallway, and I brought the picture I had of me and him from the first time I met, and he signed it. So I have a picture of him signing the picture that he signed, and I need to keep inceptioning that. Now, if I ever see him again, I got to bring the picture of him signing the picture that he signed.
Are you ready to go? Do you have it printed out? Like, is it ready?
Yeah, it's framed. I've got it.
Yeah, it's got to be ready to go. Like
at all times.
The picture of that, like, because you don't know when your shot's gonna come.
So I got like in case of emergency glass wall, like fire extinguisher, Shaq picture. Yeah, you never know when you're gonna get called to duty.
That's like one of your if there's a reason to get out of the house real quick, like that's going with you, right? It's like birth certificate and Shaq picture.
So my infatuation with Shaq. Let me tell you where this comes from. So his rookie year, what is in 6th grade, okay? And I was in a classroom, and it was a substitute teacher, and they were all talking some crap about sports. And I was Karate Kid at this time. I had never played, as hard as my dad always tried to get me to shoot hoops and stuff, I was never into it. And the substitute teacher was like, oh, I bet the girls think the Shack is a building outside. And fucking Keith Kane turns to me, and he's like, Sean, do you know what who Shaq is? And I had no idea. So then I went home, and my next door neighbor, I don't know if you remember this kid, Bobby Edwards. Do you remember Bobby Edwards?
Yeah, Bob Edwards, yeah.
Yeah, he had the aneurysm on Halloween night. It was a whole horrible thing. Yep. But I was like, yo, who's Shaq? Because he was 2 years older than me, and I thought he was like this really cool kid. And he actually had a videotape of when he broke the backboard, because it had been just recently. It's probably what spurred the original conversation. And I was like, holy shit. But then, to untop it, he stole a pair of the first Shaq Attack sneakers out of the locker room from somebody at Griswold. They were just about brand new. But now that he stole them, he couldn't wear them. He gave them to me in 7th grade. And like all these people were like Mike Flynn and Gary Alpine, like people who I thought were really cool kids, went nuts about my sneakers. And I was like, oh, I'm getting attention from these kids who I never talked to before. down and out Shaq fan. That's my that's my Shaq anthology.
Karate Kid to Shaq fan. That's funny. I love the idea that he just had a videotape of it, right? Like
VHS, yeah.
Like the artifacts that we used to have. The idea that you couldn't see, even you probably wanted to see that again when you went home.
Yeah,
you
couldn't. Right, I couldn't just pull it up on here and watch 1,000 times. Right.
It was just saved in your memory. Yeah. I have a lot of VHS Nick games and things like that. I used to tape the game. I remember one night I was working and I would set it to tape. Like playoff games, set it to tape and be like, well, luckily in Connecticut, nobody gave a shit about the Knicks game. So nobody was going to spoil it for me. But then go home and I watched the LJ 4-point game at 4:00 in the morning by myself.
Yeah.
Just like pounding on my bedroom floor, like trying not to like wake people up. Just so pumped. I miss those days. There's something to be said for discrete, limited, unconnected media and how powerful it is. That backboard breaking moment, how it stuck in your brain forever.
Well, that's the constant struggle, right? It's between like the benefit of technology and things being so available versus the times of like getting something that really means something because you couldn't get it. You know what I mean? The media in that way. A podcast I'm doing later this month, I just got the confirmation email while we're sitting here, is I just watched this documentary called The Last Blockbuster, and it has to do with there's one blockbuster left in the world. It's in Bend, Oregon, and the director of the movie is going to do the show. And we're going to talk about Blockbuster. You know what I mean? But watching that documentary, it was like, oh man, like it was so great to go to the store, and there was sometimes that you couldn't get the movie and it was heartbreaking and ruined your night, but when you were able to get the movie, it was that much better. And there's something, is that better than being able to for sure get the movie whenever you want without even putting pants on? I don't know, but there's something to be said for those experiences where the social aspect of it, where like, oh, hey, what movie are you getting? Oh, I saw that one. It sucked, where it's just now you're just so into your bubble. You know what I mean? It's, that's kind of where I look at it.
Building out your comfort zone a little by maybe spending time with media that you wouldn't otherwise. Like I have a quick trigger figure now. Like I was watching something last night and I just didn't like the score.
Yeah,
the show is fine. I was like, I don't want to hear this kind of music right now. But like, if you go to Act One Video in JC, shout out, or whatever, and you rent Milan's Secret Castle, and it sucks, you're just stuck with that. You have to play that game. You have to play that game all weekend, and you'll figure out a way to enjoy it. Or if you get some movie that maybe you're not crazy about, like I think a lot of these films that we celebrated at the time probably aren't as good as nostalgia possibly suggests. And if we saw them today, given the choice between seeing 10 other things or that, we might choose other things.
Yeah, I mean that's for sure, and I'll tell you, I'm a sucker for sentimentality and nostalgia, man. I'm all in on anything that gives me those goosebumps, But I did watch Bloodsport recently, and I loved that just as much as I did. So,
well, yeah, because it is what it is, right? Like Lionheart, Bloodsport.
Yeah, I mean, there's not any great cinematic value. I just made that word up, but cinematic value.
What was the one where he was in jail? Deep Cover? No, not Deep Cover. There was one where he goes into jail. That was another good one. But yeah, those films, you're not like, oh, this is this is an indictment of the prison system, and
right. There's not a broader message to it.
You're like, okay, he's gonna there's gonna be some quick kick, like he's gonna knock somebody's heads back with some awesome kicks. There's most likely going to be some boobs, and it's going to be a happy story.
Right.
Those Van Damme, all those Van Damme stuff really, they really hold up.
Man, this was great, bro. This was great.
I know your guest list is filling up, and I appreciate you making time for me. But I'd love to do this again later this year.
Yeah, I would too, for sure. Especially once you get the Jupiter Saloon up and running, and I can listen to some of that, and we can talk about how that's going. But once we talked about having you on, I wanted to get you on as soon as possible. I've actually got 4 booked this month, and I've never done 4 in a month before. I don't even know how I'm going to space them out, but this one will be out first. It'll be my first podcast of 2021, and I'm glad that my first was with you.
Holy fuck, I can't believe that you told me about the dream you had last night in silver, black, and white. And fucking Christ, I gotta go. Tell me everything you know about the pyramids, 'cause I've been having crazy dreams as well. Hey, we could start a band, or we could raise the Lannis.